Who killed JonBenet Ramsey? On December 26, 1996, JonBenet, a 6-year-old American child beauty queen, was found beaten and strangled in the basement of her family's residence in Boulder, Colorado. There was a garrote around her neck and duct tape covering her mouth. It was believed that she died the night before, but wasn't found until hours later. Though the case remains unsolved to this day, the police had several suspects in mind throughout the investigation, including her own parents and brother. Among the suspects on the list was a man called Gary Oliva, a homeless man who frequently visited the church near the Ramseys' home. In this episode, we'll take a more in-depth look at Gary Oliva to decide whether he's the most likely suspect for JonBenet's murder. The Ramsey residence housed a family of 4. John, the father, was a multimillionaire businessman and president of Access Graphics, a computer software company that had its headquarters located in Boulder, Colorado. Patricia, the mother, was a former beauty queen, Miss West Virginia of 1977. The brother, Burke, was 9 years old at the time. And then there's a little princess, JonBenet, who was 6 years old. In the early hours of December 23, 1996, a 911 call was made from the Ramsey home. It was reportedly a mistake made by a drunk party guest. On the 25th, the family attended a Christmas party hosted by their family friend Fleet White at his house. JonBenet receives a bike as a Christmas gift. After the party, the family goes home and JonBenet goes to bed. It is uncertain whether she snuck back downstairs to eat a late-night snack of pineapple, which was found undigested in her stomach. At 5:30 a.m. the next day, Patsy woke up and went to make coffee. She discovered a 2.5-page handwritten ransom note on the back stairs that led to the kitchen. The note stated that their daughter had been kidnapped and asked for $118,000 in ransom. Coincidentally, or not, this amount was the same as the Christmas bonus that John Ramsey had just received. Though the note ordered them to not call the police, Patsy dialed 911. Police officer Rick French arrived at the scene before 6 a.m. He conducts a search in the entire house, including the basement. He noticed a door that was secured by a wooden latch. However, he didn't open it, thinking that it was closed from the inside. It couldn't possibly be the exit route that the kidnapper had used. While the police were working with the family, preparing to comply with the instructions provided by the ransom note, they also had a forensics team come to the house. Because they believed that JonBenet was abducted from her room, they cordoned it off to prevent any evidence from getting contaminated or destroyed. However, they didn't take any precautions for the rest of the house. Aside from the police, Patsy had called family and friends about JonBenet's kidnapping. So friends, victim advocates, and even the family's minister visited the Ramsey residence to offer comfort and support. Some of them helped out by cleaning the kitchen after use, which quite possibly destroyed evidence. According to the note, John and Patsy would receive a call between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. However, 10 a.m. passed, and there was still no phone call. So at 1 p.m., John Ramsey and Fleet White, a family friend, were asked by Detective Arndt to look around the house to see if there was anything out of place in the house. The pair started their search in the basement. John opened the latch door, the same one that was overlooked by the police officer during the initial search, and found the pajama-clad body of his 6-year-old daughter inside. Ironically, this room was where the Christmas presents had been stored. JonBenet had been beaten and strangled. Her mouth was covered with duct tape. There was a nylon cord around her wrists and neck. A blanket was covering her torso. John picked up his daughter's body and took her upstairs. He also removed the tape from her mouth. He still believed that his daughter might be alive. He laid her down on the floor and, upon checking, lost that hope. An autopsy is conducted on December 27th by the Boulder, Colorado coroner's office. It was determined that JonBenet had died of strangulation. She had also suffered shocks from a stun gun, an 8-inch skull fracture, and sexual assault with a broken piece from the paintbrush that was used to make the garrote that strangled her. DNA was found underneath JonBenet's fingernails, as well as on her underwear and long johns. The kidnapping case had become murder, and the number of theories spouted by both law enforcement and the public were numerous. There were many suspects for the murder of JonBenet. The police mainly focused on her parents, but according to a few experts, an intruder was more likely to have committed the crime. So, was someone able to come inside the house that night? The police claimed that this was impossible. But there was a broken window in the basement. It was John Ramsey who had broken it before in order to get into the house because he had left his keys. According to the police, there were cobwebs on the window which they believed made it impossible for anyone to go through it without disturbing them. They had a photo to prove it. Because the Boulder County District Attorney wanted to explore other theories, they hired retired Colorado detective Lou Smith 3 months after the murder. According to his investigation, it was actually quite possible for someone to have entered the Ramsey home through the cellar window. And he demonstrated this fact, which can be seen through archived footage. Moreover, spiders can weave webs pretty fast. Who knows when this picture was taken after JonBenet was murdered? More importantly, the police reportedly found other possible entry points. 2 windows were left slightly open to allow the electrical cords for the outside Christmas lights to pass through, and a door had been left unlocked that night. In addition to having several possible entry points, the police also found a shoe print from a high-tech brand boot near the body. No one in the family owned shoes from this brand. Smith also found a smudge on the wall in a photograph of the crime scene. For him, this mark could indicate that someone could have scuffed the wall while shimmying through the window. In addition, there were also finger marks on the glass, as well as an unidentified footprint on the suitcase that was located below the window. According to Smith, the perpetrator might have wanted to use the suitcase to take JonBenet's body out of the house. That's not the only evidence that pushes the intruder theory to the forefront. It was later discovered that there used to be a metal grill blocking the entrance to the window. However, foliage had grown underneath the grill, indicating that it had been moved at some point. Moreover, the stun gun marks on JonBenet's body point towards a stranger instead of a family member. Though the police have long since claimed that no stun gun was used on JonBenet, experts, including a Colorado medical examiner, say differently. But if the murderer had taken JonBenet from her room all the way to the basement, wouldn't her parents have heard something? Well, not really. First, JonBenet was probably unconscious due to the stun gun. Second, the floors in the house were heavily carpeted. It was possible to walk around the house without making a sound. Moreover, they had just had a very eventful day. It's highly likely that they were tired and deeply asleep that night. So if it was an intruder who committed the murder, who is the most likely suspect? It was discovered that there were more than 100 burglaries that occurred in the Ramsey's neighborhood within the months before she died. Moreover, there were 38 registered sex offenders within a 2-mile radius of her home. One of them actually lived just down the street. He was identified by Smith and the Ramsey's private investigator, Ollie Gray, as a very credible suspect. His name is Gary Oliva. Who was Gary Oliva? Gary Oliva was the town drifter, a 32-year-old convicted pedophile who had been living in the area on and off. In fact, he frequently visited a church less than 2 blocks from the Ramsey residence. Oliver was also observed attending the candlelight vigil that was held shortly after JonBenet's death. In the photos of him during the 1-year anniversary vigil, he was seen holding a folder that was sealed tightly with a strip of smooth black duct tape. No duct tape was found in the Ramsey residence. In 2000, 4 years after the murder, Oliver was arrested for illegally entering the University of Colorado's Fine Arts building after hours. The police allegedly found a cutout of JonBenet Ramsey from a magazine in his backpack. They also found a stun gun. While it can't be confirmed when he started carrying it, it is still a detail worth noting when judging the possibility of Oliver being the murderer. A copy of the police report revealed that the police searched his phone. They found hundreds of images in his phone that depicted child pornography. In addition to that, he also had 335 photos, either of or related to JonBenet. Some of the photos were those you could find online. Nearly 20 of them were from her autopsy, possibly photos that were leaked to the press previously. Other photos were of shrines to JonBenet. It was never confirmed whether these shrines were made by Oliver and where they are located. When asked, Oliver stated that he felt JonBenet's death was an exceptional loss. He felt the need to build a shrine to remember the little girl, so he carried a photo of her in his backpack. He even wrote a poem entitled Ode to JonBenet. As for the stun gun, Oliver claimed that it was given to him by a friend who was concerned about his safety. However, he was soon released, though they remained suspicious of him. In 2003, a memo written by investigator Tom Bennett to ADA Bill Nagel mentioned that he had conducted a background investigation of Gary Oliva. He was one of the persons high on the list of potential suspects. The investigation included an interview with Oliver. Bennett claimed that he found proof that Oliver was not responsible for the death of JonBenet Ramsey. Unfortunately, he did not mention what proof he found in the memo. In an interview with 48 Hours in 2002, Michael Vale, a high school friend of Oliver, claimed that shortly after the murder, Oliver had called him on the phone, distraught. He confessed to Vale that he had hurt a little girl. I hurt a little girl. Vale also stated that he had many cassette tapes made by Oliver talking about necrophilia and little girls. He also played some of these tapes, and one can hear Oliver talking, asking a little girl to sit on his lap and let him touch her back. In an interview with In Touch magazine, Vale stated that the knots used to make the garrotes were similar to the ones used by Oliver when he tried to choke his mother with a telephone cord. The incident with his mother occurred in 1991, just a year after he was charged with sexually abusing a 7-year-old girl. Oliver was also interviewed by 48 Hours. He claimed that JonBenet came to him after she was killed and revealed herself to him. He also described wanting to be a cowboy sweetheart, referring to a footage of the little girl wearing a cowboy suit. His obsession with JonBenet is very apparent. However, obsession does not equal to guilt. There is also evidence that makes us doubt whether Oliver really did it. First, let's talk about the ransom note. It was written on a paper pad from inside the house. The pen used was also from the Ramsey residence. Some believe that it was written after the perpetrator had murdered Ramsey. It's possible that he wrote it before. We can't say it definitively. That's not the important point. The amount specified on the note was pretty specific. It's a little unlikely that Oliver would know how much John had received as a Christmas bonus. Some say that he could have seen the pay stub, which was either on John's desk or inside a drawer. But would a pedophile take the time to rummage through a desk and read documents? It doesn't seem likely. His purpose was JonBenet, not to rob the Ramseys. That's not all. Oliver's handwriting does not match the one on the ransom note. Aside from the ransom note, we have the DNA testing results. DNA testing cleared Oliver for the JonBenet murder. The police couldn't connect him to the crime scene. Some question whether he was really cleared of suspicion due to DNA testing. Based on the list of individuals named in lab reports made available to the public, Oliver's name is missing. That being said, as a convicted sex offender, his DNA should have been entered into CODIS. And according to one web sleuth, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation did test his DNA, obtained through a cheek swab by the Boulder Police Department. It was not a match. However, we must take note that the BPD had acknowledged that the crime scene evidence had been mishandled. Moreover, lab results have shown that the male DNA sample obtained from JonBenet's clothes is most likely a mixture of multiple people's DNA. Simply put, it didn't belong to a single unidentified male. Moreover, there's no way to know for sure if the DNA was left by the murderer while committing the crime. Further DNA testing will need to be conducted. However, according to the authorities, the amount of DNA evidence available for analysis is extremely small and complex. They need to wait for proven technology that can reliably test this type of sample. Until then, DNA cannot be used to prove or disprove any of the suspect's guilt. In addition, there was another suspect who had a stun gun. More importantly, he also owned a pair of high-tech boots, the same as the shoe print found at the crime scene. That being said, the man, Michael Helgoth, killed himself shortly after the murder. DNA testing also showed that he was not a match. It must be said that there were so many investigative mistakes made in this case, starting from when the police first arrived at the scene. A lot of potential evidence may have been destroyed, possibly causing the case to remain unsolved to this day. There is quite a bit of circumstantial evidence pointing to Gary Oliva as the perpetrator, but there are also details that put his guilt into doubt. However, it seems that Oliva has finally confessed to killing JonBenet. In 2019, letters sent by Oliva to his friend Michael Vale was obtained by the Daily Mail. In them, he confessed to killing the little girl. In one of the letters, he states, "I never loved anyone like I did JonBenet, and yet I let her slip and her head bashed in half, and I watched her die. It was an accident. Please believe me, she was not like the other kids." In another one, he says, "JonBenet completely changed me and removed all evil from me. Just one look at her beautiful face, her glowing beautiful skin, and her divine God body. I realized I was wrong to kill other kids. Yet by accident she died, and it was my fault." The incriminating letters were reportedly written by Oliva while serving a 10-year sentence for 2 counts of attempted sexual exploitation of a child and 1 count of sexual exploitation of a child, charges in June 2016. They have been presented to the Boulder Police Department, and the authorities have cleared him. With a lot of conflicting evidence at hand, we can't clearly state that Gary Oliva is guilty of murdering JonBenet Ramsey. But if we were to judge the case based on what we found, he's quite possibly one of the best suspects on our list. If you love our content and want to support the channel, feel free to check our web shop where you can find exclusive true crime merch brought to you by Bad Things.